If your calling matters but your days remain ungoverned, distraction will make decisions your purpose should have made. Have you ever ended a busy day exhausted, yet unable to identify what truly moved forward? An urgent request seized your calendar. Your mood determined whether you worked. Digital noise consumed the attention your vision required. A careless word weakened trust. Then exhaustion became so normal that you began calling survival faithfulness. Here's the truth. Movement is not always progress, and activity is not always obedience. You can possess a sincere desire to fulfill your purpose and still live by reaction. You can know where you want to go and remain trapped in patterns that cannot carry you there. Inspiration can awaken intention, but it cannot organize an ordinary Tuesday. It can show you a meaningful future, but it cannot decide when you will focus, what you will refuse, how carefully you will speak, or when you must recover. Inspiration may begin the journey. Governance sustains it. So your problem may not be a lack of talent. It may not be a lack of faith. It may not even be a lack of desire. Your problem may be that pressure keeps making decisions you should have settled beforehand. That is why you need a rule of life, a small personal operating system built around your assignment. It protects your energy from misuse, your attention from invasion, your character from compromise, and your relationships from neglect. It allows you to stop negotiating with every mood and start living from established conviction. We are going to examine 6 places where capacity commonly leaks. Your time, your appetites, your attention, your speech, your relationships, and your recovery. Then we will turn what you discover into a small set of sustainable non-negotiables. You do not need another temporary burst of motivation. You need protective structure. But before we construct that structure, we must redefine discipline itself. Discipline is not a sentence imposed upon your life. It is a wall built around what your life was created to carry. Think about a city filled with treasure, skilled people, and enormous potential, but with no walls and no gates. Its wealth may be impressive, but it is not secure. Anything can enter. Anyone can take control. Confusion crosses the border because nothing governs access. Scripture compares a person without self-control to a city whose walls have been broken down. That image reveals the true purpose of discipline. Walls were not built because everything inside the city was worthless. Walls were built because something inside was valuable. Your life is the same. Without boundaries, every distraction enters. Every temptation receives an audience. Every convenient excuse gains authority. Other people's emergencies invade your calendar, and before long, you are spending your strength on matters that were never assigned to you. Discipline is values making decisions before feelings, fatigue, and pressure arrive. It is deciding in clarity what you will still honor in difficulty. Feelings are real, but they are unstable leaders. They change with comfort, criticism, appetite, and circumstance. Values give direction. Discipline gives those values behavior. This is why discipline is not punishment. Punishment focuses only on what must be denied. Protection begins by identifying what must be preserved. Your focus is valuable. Your integrity is valuable. Your energy, relationships, and assignment are valuable. Discipline creates the conditions in which these things can endure. A settled standard also ends unnecessary negotiation. You do not wake up every morning debating whether integrity matters or whether your essential responsibilities deserve attention. Some questions should be answered once, so your energy can be spent executing the answer. And understand this, greater opportunity does not repair disorder. It magnifies it. If your boundaries leak under small responsibility, expansion can turn those leaks into crises. Before greater influence, there must be greater self-government. Before promotion, preparation. Before increase, order. So stop asking only, what must I deny myself? Ask the higher question. What has been entrusted to me that must be protected? Discipline is not a war against your life. It is stewardship of your life. Yet protective walls must fit what they surround. The next task is not to copy another person's routine, but to study the actual demands of your own assignment. This is where many people make a serious mistake. They discover someone whose results they admire, copy that person's routine, and assume imitation will produce the same life. But you do not know that person's entire responsibility. You do not know their season, their support, their limitations, or the private cost behind what you see. A borrowed routine may look disciplined and still be wrong for your assignment. The caregiver and the creator may both live purposefully, but their mornings may look different. The student, the teacher, the builder, and the leader may all require order, but not identical order. Purpose does not demand uniformity. It demands alignment. So begin with one sentence. What am I responsible to contribute? Whom am I called to serve? And what does faithfulness require from me now? Not someday, now. Then make an honest inventory. What work must be completed repeatedly? Which people must be served consistently? What promises must be honored? What kind of character must you possess to carry that responsibility without damaging yourself or others? Now, identify the capacities beneath those demands. Your assignment may require focused time, physical energy, clear thinking, emotional steadiness, trustworthy speech, dependable relationships, and meaningful recovery. These capacities are not accessories. They are part of your stewardship. Then reverse engineer your standards. If your responsibility requires clarity in the morning, your discipline may begin the night before. If it requires trust, you must govern your promises. If it requires sustained attention, you must restrict interruption. If people depend on your presence, you cannot spend all your energy proving how busy you are. Here's the truth. A discipline is useful only when it protects something your purpose requires. Ask yourself, does this practice serve my responsibility? Can I sustain it in this season? Does it strengthen my integrity? What predictable weakness is it designed to prevent? Those questions separate conviction from imitation. You do not need the most impressive routine. You need the right structure. Personal does not mean careless, and proportionate does not mean weak. It means your standards have been designed around what has actually been entrusted to you. Once those demands are visible, they must be translated into a rule simple enough to remember and strong enough to govern real decisions. Now, do not turn your rule of life into a catalog of everything an ideal person could possibly do. If your system is too complicated to remember, it will be too heavy to practice. A useful rule is small. It settles a few important decisions before pressure arrives. Build it in 3 layers. First, establish daily anchors. These are brief practices that keep your life pointed toward purpose. A moment of prayer and reflection, a period of focused work, a commitment to review your responsibilities. They do not need to be dramatic. They need to be dependable. Second, establish weekly rhythms. Create space to step back, examine your direction, restore your strength, and prepare for what is coming. Without review, small deviations become repeated patterns. What you refuse to examine, you eventually normalize. Third, establish protective boundaries. Decide what will not be permitted to invade your most important responsibilities. A boundary may govern your availability, your devices, your spending, your conversations, or your rest. It identifies a predictable threat and closes the gate before that threat arrives. And write every standard in observable language. I will be more focused is a desire, not a rule. A rule says when you will focus, where you will work, what you will do, and what you will exclude. Clarity makes obedience practical. But test every non-negotiable for necessity. What real demand does it protect? Do not burden your life with ornamental habits simply because they look impressive. An unnecessary discipline can consume the energy an essential responsibility requires. You must also separate the principle from the method. The principle may be fixed while the method remains flexible. Your commitment to reflection may remain even when the hour changes. Your commitment to focused work may remain even when the location changes. Purpose gives firmness, wisdom permits adaptation. And prepare a minimum faithful version for disrupted days. Illness, travel, caregiving, and crisis may alter your method. They do not have to erase your direction. Adaptation is not abandonment. Start with a few high-leverage commitments. Simple enough to remember, clear enough to measure, strong enough to protect what matters. Your rule should serve your assignment, not become another assignment competing for your attention. Now we must discover which commitments belong in it. The first audit begins with the resource every assignment spends and no person can recover once it has passed: time. Look at the last 7 days of your life, not the priorities you announced, not the intentions you carried. Look at where your hours actually went. Your calendar is evidence. It reveals what received access, what was repeatedly postponed, and what was forced to survive on whatever time remained. Many people begin the day without direction and then wonder why urgency becomes their master. They respond to whatever makes the most noise. They accept requests without examining capacity. They postpone small responsibilities until those responsibilities return as emergencies. Then they place their most important work at the end of the day, after every interruption has already taken its share. Here's the truth. Procrastination is not passive. A delayed task does not disappear. It continues occupying mental space, weakening peace, and gathering pressure. What could have been handled with clarity is eventually confronted in crisis. So, govern your time through honest triage. First, identify the responsibilities only you can fulfill. Second, schedule commitments that are necessary but do not require immediate action. Third, delegate or renegotiate requests that exceed your role or capacity. Finally, remove activities that consume time while contributing nothing to your responsibility, renewal, or relationships. Now establish 2 standards. The first is a brief daily planning appointment. Before competing voices organize your day, identify what must be honored, what can wait, and what should be refused. The second is a protected block for the most consequential work of your assignment. Do not leave purpose to leftover time. Give it an appointment. Protect that appointment from casual interruption, unnecessary input, and your own tendency to escape difficult work. Before you accept another commitment, ask 3 questions. What will this displace? Does this belong to my responsibility? Can I honor it without violating a promise I have already made? Every yes spends a portion of your life. Wisdom examines the cost before agreeing to pay it. So take one immediate action. Open tomorrow's calendar and reserve one appointment with your assignment before interruption claims the entire day. Time must stop being an open field where every demand competes equally. It must become a governed resource, directed by purpose. But even a well-planned calendar can be overruled from within when appetite demands comfort, novelty, or relief at the wrong moment. You can protect an hour on the calendar and still surrender it to an impulse. The work becomes difficult, progress feels slow, or an uncomfortable emotion rises, and suddenly you want relief more than you want responsibility. Appetite is not limited to food. It is the demand for entertainment when focus is required. Spending when restraint is wiser. Approval when conviction is costly. Argument when silence would protect peace. Novelty when consistency feels ordinary. And convenience when purpose asks for sacrifice. Desire is not automatically your enemy. God created you with desires, needs, and the capacity for enjoyment. The danger begins when appetite is promoted above values. A temporary feeling should never be given authority to make a permanent decision. The ungoverned question is, what do I want right now? The governed question is, what choice protects what I value most? One seeks immediate comfort, the other honors calling. One allows the moment to rule the future, the other brings the moment under purpose. Now be honest. Which appetite appears when your work becomes demanding? Do you reach for a screen? Do you spend? Do you seek attention? Do you start an unnecessary conversation? Do you abandon the difficult task for something easy that makes you feel productive? Name it. What remains unnamed remains difficult to govern. Then design friction around that predictable moment. Remove easy access to the distraction. Choose an alternative action before the craving arrives. Establish a clear stopping boundary. Invite a trusted person to ask whether you honored your decision. Do not build your discipline around the fantasy that temptation will never appear. Build it around the wisdom that knows where it usually enters. Delayed gratification is not permanent deprivation. It is purposeful timing. A present no can protect a more important future yes. You are not rejecting pleasure. You are refusing to let pleasure become your master. Choose one appetite standard. Make it specific, modest, and measurable. Connect it to your assignment, not to appearance, competition, or shame. Every time you lead desire with values, you strengthen self-government. Restraint becomes not merely what you refuse, but evidence of what you have chosen to protect. Appetite seeks satisfaction, but attention determines direction. What repeatedly captures the mind will eventually compete for command of the life. Your attention is not merely something you possess. It is something everything around you is trying to recruit. Your device wants it, your environment wants it, conversations, concerns, advertisements, notifications, and controversies all compete for the right to direct your mind. And when everything receives your attention, your assignment receives fragments. You may be busy from morning until night and still remain undirected. Scattered effort feels strenuous because you keep beginning, stopping, reacting, and beginning again. Energy is spent recovering focus rather than completing responsibility. Busyness measures motion. Direction measures alignment. Now audit the gates. What enters your mind first in the morning? Which notifications interrupt your best thinking? How often do you check a device without a clear reason? What background noise follows you through the day? Which unresolved worries, gossip-filled conversations, or public arguments leave you agitated about matters you were never assigned to solve? Ask yourself 3 questions. What repeatedly interrupts my most important work? What leaves my mind noisy after it ends? What am I consuming that has no legitimate claim on my purpose? Your answers will reveal where attention is leaking. Then build gates. Delay optional input at the beginning of the day so your purpose speaks before the world does. Silence alerts that do not require immediate action. Create periods in which you perform one meaningful task without switching. Choose deliberate times to read messages and respond to communication instead of living permanently available. Also establish a brief practice of silence and clarity. Pause, pray, think, write. Review what matters before reacting to what is loud. Silence is not emptiness, it is room for direction to become audible. And learn the discipline of selective ignorance. Maturity is knowing what does not deserve entry. Every opinion does not require your consideration. Every controversy does not require your participation. Every criticism does not require your defense. Every available message does not require an immediate answer. Focus is not a mood you must wait to feel. It is an environment you must design. Every gate you establish tells your mind that purpose has priority. You stop donating attention to every interruption and start directing it toward what has been entrusted to you. But remember, what enters through attention soon exits through speech, and ungoverned words can destroy in minutes the credibility discipline took years to build. Your words are not merely sounds. They create expectations. They reveal whether your inner life is governed, and they tell other people whether your presence is safe, your promises are dependable, and your counsel deserves trust. That makes speech a matter of stewardship. Now audit the leaks. Do you promise too quickly because you want to please people in the moment? Do you speak from temporary anger and leave permanent damage behind? Do you participate in conversations that corrode someone else's dignity? Do you use impressive language publicly that your private behavior does not support? An unguarded yes can create weeks of disorder. The moment you say yes, you spend future time, energy, and credibility. If you have not examined your capacity, today's enthusiasm becomes tomorrow's broken promise. A sincere intention does not cancel the effect of unreliability. So put a pause between emotion and expression. Before you speak, ask, is it true? Is it necessary? Is it mine to say, can I stand behind these words tomorrow? That pause is not weakness, it is government. It keeps a passing feeling from gaining permanent authority. Promise slowly, record what you commit to do, correct misunderstandings before they grow, refuse the shortcut that requires dishonesty. When you are wrong, say so plainly. When you cannot fulfill a commitment, address it early rather than hiding behind silence. And let your conduct in private give weight to what you declare in public. Integrity does not mean you never make a mistake. It means your convictions, your words, and your behavior are moving in the same direction. When they fall out of alignment, you do not protect an image, you correct the breach. Here's the truth. Attention can be captured by volume, but influence is sustained by credibility. You may impress people with what you occasionally say, but they learn whether to trust you by what you consistently do. Truthfulness, restraint, and fulfilled commitments turn speech into a foundation others can stand upon. Governed words are not merely good manners. They are evidence of dependable character. Every promise you honor strengthens the kind of person who can carry greater responsibility without sacrificing integrity. Words shape relationships, but relationships also shape standards. The people nearest to you can reinforce your rule of life or quietly negotiate it away. Self-government does not mean isolation. You were not designed to fulfill purpose without people. But you must understand the difference between relationship and unrestricted access. The goal is wise proximity, not hostility, superiority, or indifference. Repeated exposure shapes what begins to feel normal. Stay near responsibility, and your standards are strengthened. Stay near constant excuse, distraction, drama, and compromise, and those patterns slowly become familiar. You may still believe in purpose while your environment trains you to tolerate everything that weakens it. So conduct an access audit. Who can interrupt your time without warning? Whose opinion shapes your major decisions? Which conversations dominate your emotional energy? Where have you confused genuine obligation with guilt? And who benefits when you remain unable to say no? These questions are not accusations. They are instruments of clarity. Love does not require unlimited access. You can honor a person without allowing them to govern your calendar. You can treat someone with dignity without surrendering your focus. You can show kindness without giving another person authority over your convictions or future. A boundary does not declare that another person has no value. It declares that what God entrusted to you also has value. Now identify 3 groups. Which relationships deserve more gratitude and investment? Which relationships require clearer expectations? Which environments require purposeful distance because they repeatedly weaken your peace, integrity, or direction? Then build constructive support into your rule of life. Choose one person who can ask you honest questions. Seek wise counsel from someone whose character supports the advice they give. And give regular, protected attention to the people your assignment requires you to serve well. Boundaries should not merely keep harmful influence out. They should help faithful relationships flourish. Prepare simple language before pressure arrives. Say, I cannot commit to that, but I can offer this. Say, I need time to consider what this will require. Say, I am not available for that conversation. A respectful no does not need blame, hostility, or an elaborate defense. Arrange proximity according to responsibility, not pressure. You stop giving automatic access and start granting intentional access. That is not rejection. It is stewardship. But even the right work, appetites, inputs, words, and relationships cannot be sustained by a depleted person. Protection must include recovery. Some people use rest to avoid responsibility. Others use constant activity to prove their worth. One escapes the assignment. The other becomes consumed by it. Neither is mature stewardship. Diligence is not endless motion. It is focused, faithful effort arranged in a sustainable rhythm. You can work many hours and still waste enormous energy through interruption, indecision, unfinished tasks, and crises that planning could have prevented. Scattered work exhausts you because you keep changing direction without reaching completion. Here's the truth. Recovery is not an escape from purpose. It is maintenance for service. The question is not merely, did I stop working? The better question is, does the way I recover restore the clarity, presence, and strength my responsibility requires? Some forms of escape leave you more distracted than before. Real renewal prepares you to return with greater order. Now examine the signals. Are you continually borrowing from sleep to rescue a disorganized schedule? Have you removed every moment of reflection? Does work follow you into every conversation and relationship? Do you wait until exhaustion forces you to stop because you never gave yourself permission to pause with intention? Do not wait for collapse to create a boundary. Build recovery at 3 levels. First, establish small daily practices that close the day and release accumulated tension. Second, protect a recurring weekly period in which you disengage from ordinary production, renew your perspective, and attend to your inner life and relationships. Third, after an unusually demanding season, review what was spent and what must be restored before you accept the next burden. Create a simple shutdown practice. Record what remains unfinished so your mind does not have to carry it. Choose the next important action so tomorrow begins with clarity. Release what cannot be completed today. Then mark a boundary between labor and renewal. Planned recovery protects diligence from 2 extremes. Overextension that ends in burnout an unsustainable intensity that ends in total withdrawal. You are not called merely to begin with force. You must remain useful, present, and faithful over time. Rest, then, is not the opposite of responsibility. Properly governed, it is part of responsibility. You stop treating depletion as proof of commitment and start protecting the capacity your assignment will require tomorrow. The 6 audits have exposed the leaks. Now they must be integrated into one operating system that survives ordinary disruption. Now bring the 6 areas together. Time directs your effort. Appetite governs impulse. Attention protects clarity. Speech preserves integrity. Relationships shape your environment. Recovery renews your capacity. These are not separate compartments. They form one system, and weakness in one area can place pressure on all the others. Choose one high-leverage standard for each area. Then simplify. Combine what naturally belongs together. Remove anything decorative. Your complete rule should be clear enough to remember without consulting a complicated manual every morning. If you cannot carry it in your mind, you will struggle to carry it into pressure. Every standard should answer 4 questions. What value am I protecting? What observable practice will protect it? What boundary will keep interference out? What signal will tell me that this standard needs review? For example, if you are protecting focus work, your practice may be a scheduled single task period. Your boundary may be silence notifications. Your review signal may be repeatedly missing the period because the chosen time no longer fits your responsibilities. The value remains. The method can be adjusted. Then establish a weekly stewardship review. Examine your calendar, your promises, your distractions, your relationships, and your patterns of energy. Acknowledge what you honored. Identify one recurring leak. Adjust the method without abandoning the purpose. Review prevents quiet disorder from becoming accepted character. And prepare for failure before failure arrives. When you miss a standard, acknowledge it without excuse. Repair any harm. Identify the trigger. Resume at the next opportunity. Strengthen the boundary that proved too weak. Do not allow perfectionism to turn one breach into total surrender. Consistency does not mean disruption never happens. It means disruption does not receive permanent authority. Faithful people are not people who never need correction. They are people who return to alignment. Share your rules selectively with someone trustworthy, someone who can ask clear questions, encourage honesty, and resist both flattery and condemnation. Accountability should support responsibility, not replace it. Finally, test your system against a difficult week. What remains essential when travel, illness, caregiving, or unexpected pressure changes your normal rhythm? Preserve the anchors. Reduce what is optional. Use the minimum faithful version. Your rule must serve the assignment, not become another assignment, demanding attention. That is how structure remains firm without becoming brittle. It keeps direction through pressure, adapts through changing seasons, and repairs itself after failure. But a system becomes real only when a decision enters the calendar. So this message must end not with admiration for a principle, but with a covenant for immediate, visible action. Now pause. Do not rush past conviction. Name the single leak that is costing your assignment the most capacity. Is it ungoverned time? An appetite without boundaries? Divided attention? Careless speech? Unwise access? Neglected recovery? Choose one. Honesty is where government begins. Then make a 7-day covenant. On the first day, write your present assignment in 1 sentence. On the second, observe the 6 domains without defending what you discover. On the third, identify the leak producing the greatest disorder. On the fourth, write one protective standard in clear, measurable language. On the fifth, place that standard on your calendar or establish its boundary in your environment. On the sixth, tell one trusted person what you have decided. On the seventh, review what happened, identify what interfered, and strengthen the method for the week ahead. Keep the first commitment small enough to repeat and meaningful enough to matter. You are not attempting to reinvent your entire life in 7 days. You are proving that purpose can govern an ordinary day. 1 standard, 1 week, 1 faithful act at a time. Do not perform this for applause. This is stewardship. You are learning to become dependable with what is already in your hands before asking for greater responsibility. You do not need inspiration without structure. You do not need ambition without integrity. You do not need activity without recovery. You need purpose protected by daily government, clear decisions, faithful practices, and boundaries that endure when feelings change. Write this covenant and speak it if you can. My time will receive direction. My appetites will receive boundaries. My attention will receive protection. My words will carry truth. My relationships will respect purpose. My recovery will support faithful service. I will not surrender my assignment to distraction by default. I will govern what has been entrusted to me. Every governed day is training. Every promise honored builds credibility. Every boundary maintained strengthens the person who can carry greater responsibility, deeper influence, and a contribution that outlives the moment. Your rule of life begins now, not with control for its own sake, not with punishment, not with perfection. It begins with protection, with the recognition that your assignment is too valuable to be left at the mercy of mood, pressure, and interruption. The choice is immediate. Allow distraction to keep governing by default, or begin protecting your assignment through one faithful standard today.